Today on the newscast, Israel warns that Iran could be planning World Cup attacks. Plus, Hezbollah transporting chemical weapons to Lebanon. Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Some very interesting remarks by the head of Israel's military intelligence, General Aharon Haliva, today at a conference on Iran taking place in Israel. Now, what really jumped out at me were his comments about possible Iranian attacks at the World Cup in Qatar. That's going on right now. It just began over the weekend. By the way, the Iranian men's national team lost today by a score of 6-2 to England. But what really stood out to me about that game was what seemed to be a silent protest by the Iranian men's team. They did not sing along or show any recognition of Iran's national anthem before the game. So very interesting to see what kind of repercussions there would be if they return home, how the regime reacts. They were protesting, apparently, the treatment of protesters inside Iran right now, as we've documented for you here in the newscast. For some 2 months now, the Iranian people have taken to the streets to protest against this wicked regime, and the regime is becoming more and more brutal in response. General Aharon Haliva, again, the head of Israel's military intelligence, he addressed that as well. I'm going to break down his comments, why they were so important in a second, but before I do, a quick programming note. You know that usually on Wednesdays, sometimes on Thursdays, if I'm not on the road, we have our Watchman Newscast live stream here on the channel. We go for 1 hour straight and we take your questions. Well, we are doing it tomorrow, Tuesday, November 22nd, because it's Thanksgiving week here in the States. The schedule's a little bit crazy. We've got the holiday upon us. So tomorrow, mark your calendars, folks, Tuesday, November 22nd, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we will go for 1 hour solid, a Watchman Newscast live stream, and we will take your questions. So be sure to bring some good ones for our Q&A. We look forward to that tomorrow. By the way, while you're here, hey, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted, a new live stream is posted. We would love to have you here shoulder to shoulder with us, with over 500,000 other watchmen and women on the wall who've subscribed for such a time as this. Okay, let's break down these comments made today by the head of Israel's military intelligence. Number one, the big one that jumps out, obviously, and he didn't go into great detail about this, folks, but what he said I felt was noteworthy, that Iran has considered carrying out attacks in Qatar, which is not far from Iran, right across the Persian Gulf, obviously, during the World Cup. But what is stopping Iran, according to General Haliva, is the potential response from Qatar. Now, what kind of response he means, I'm not sure. Economic, military. Obviously, the world would respond as well, probably with new sanctions, you would think, if Iran's fingerprints were on some sort of attack in Qatar during the World Cup. Who would they target? Israelis, Americans? Unclear. Again, he did not elaborate to any great extent. But what he did say, I think, was noteworthy, that Iran has considered attacks at the World Cup, but has decided not to do so for now, thankfully. And this is worth mentioning also because Israel's outgoing defense minister, Benny Gantz, said today that Iran may look to cause, quote, instability at the World Cup. So you have Benny Gantz and also a general, of course, Benny Gantz, the IDF's, the Israel Defense Forces former chief of staff, now the defense minister, and you have the head of military intelligence both saying, hey, Iran could consider causing some havoc at the World Cup. Nothing etched in stone, thank God. We hope nothing like that happens. We pray nothing like that happens. But folks, it is something to keep an eye on, especially, of course, with Qatar in such close proximity to Iran right now. And as General Haliva went on to say in the speech today, with Iran struggling big time at home right now, I mean the Iranian regime. I'm not talking about the Iranian people, folks. Let's make that clear. The problem in Iran is the regime, is the government, the tyrannical government, whose main victims are the Iranian people. They're feeling the brunt of the jackboot of the regime as I speak. And because the Iranian regime is facing that internal unrest, General Haliva said today he believes that not only will Iran look to become more violent and aggressive in suppressing these protests at home in Iran, but they will also lash out more abroad. I think that is a very key point here, folks. If the regime feels like its back is against the wall, look for it to lash out. We see that already. And by the way, the head of Israel's military intelligence said today that he does not believe the regime is in jeopardy of being overthrown yet. The protests have definitely made a major impact. It has scared the regime, no doubt. The protests that have lasted for over 2 months after the death of that 22-year-old Iranian woman, Mahsa Amini, at the hands of Iran's so-called morality police because she apparently was not wearing her hijab, her headscarf, in a proper fashion. It cost her her life. But the protests broke out then September 16th. They have raged ever since in cities across Iran. But according to this Israeli general, he doesn't think the regime is in danger of being toppled yet. And he believes that before that were to happen, the regime would really go all in and up the brutality against its own people. We've already seen hundreds of Iranians killed over the past 2 months by the regime in the midst of these protests. And the regime, when all is said and done, is willing to go to extremely brutal and deadly lengths, I'm sad to say, to hold on to power. So we're watching that closely as well. We've been monitoring that here in the newscast over the past 2 months for you, the ongoing protests. Also, one last thing to point out, that the head of Israel's military intelligence, again, General Aharon Haliva, said today that he expects the world is going to have a crisis on its hands very soon because he believes that Iran may be on the cusp of enriching uranium at a 90% level. Folks, that is a weapons grade, nuclear weapons grade enrichment of uranium. He believes Iran may do that very soon. A very explosive, no pun intended, report out of the Saudi Al-Hadath news outlet on Sunday. Now, Al-Hadath is the sister network of Al Arabiya, which is a major publication out of Saudi Arabia. But Al-Hadath reported that Hezbollah is attempting to transport missiles that are basically chemical-tipped missiles, chemical weapons, trying to transport them from Syria into Lebanon. According to this report, again, from a Saudi media outlet, North Korea helped equip these missiles with that chemical capability, along with help from Iran's, surprise, surprise, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Now, apparently these missiles were equipped with that chemical capability in the town of Masyaf in northwestern Syria, not far from the Mediterranean coast. There were, as we reported here in the newscast in recent months, Israeli airstrikes targeting chemical weapons factories in that Masyaf region. Now Hezbollah, apparently, according to this Saudi report, again, is planning to transport these chemical-equipped missiles from Syria into Lebanon. They are now, apparently, according to the Saudi report, in the town of Al-Qasr along the Syria-Lebanon border, but on the Syrian side. And of course, you know that Israel is watching all of this very closely, and you would think that Israeli intelligence has a pretty good handle on where these missiles are, if they are indeed equipped with a chemical weapons capability. Israel, of course, continues to carry out airstrikes in Syria against the likes of Iran and Hezbollah. And over the weekend, we had more Israeli airstrikes in Syria as well, targeting those Iranian weapon shipments. The more Iran pushes and tries to equip Hezbollah with these weapons and use Syria as a transit point, the more Iran tries to move towards the Golan Heights, the more Israel strikes. And with great success, they have really made a major dent in Iran's capabilities in Syria. And yet, Iran continues with its efforts because, folks, at the end of the day, this is an integral part of the Iranian regime's ideology. To destroy the world's one and only Jewish state, you need to surround it on all sides with a ring of fire, missiles, drones, and that's exactly what Iran has done through its proxies like Hezbollah. Here's the good news. We've read the book, and we know that's not going to happen. We know the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. We know that he is on the throne and that things won't end very well, needless to say, for Iran and its proxies. So let's stay in prayer on all of this, folks. Don't get discouraged about this news. We think you'd rather know than not know here at the Newscast, but remember that God is in control. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Newscast. Remember, live stream tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the channel. Until then, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.